joining us on the Comcast Business Hotline from the NovaCare Complex. Covers the Eagles for ESPN, joins us every week, Tim McManus. Timmy Mac, what's up, brother?
What's going on, guys? How you doing? Well, football's back in our lives. I like it.
Yes, thank goodness. Now, we haven't had a chance to talk to you about any of the trade deadline moves, but I want to talk more about Michael Carter II for a second. Because yesterday, Howie Roseman referred to Michael Carter as being an elite-level player inside. And I took that as, wait a second, is the plan to play him at nickel and move Cooper DeJean outside? How do you see them work in this secondary now?
Yeah, really fascinating, Bill. I think the other part that caught my attention with Roseman is when he said he can also play safety. Really what I view both the Alexander acquisition and the Carter acquisition as is giving Vic Fangio options. I don't know that they have it's absolutely going to be this type of plan right now. I think they get them in, and they were just out on the practice field, all three of the new acquisitions in that Eagles green. And so, an interesting sight to see. But I think really what it does is it adds depth, competition, and options in that defensive secondary. When we spoke with Fangio last, he talked about how ideally he'd like to keep Cooper DeJean inside. He's just so valuable. I mean, he affects the game more in there. But you just have to weigh it versus, if Carter can come in and give you really good snaps on the interior, and then you can also solve your CB2 problem, then they might have to go in that direction. If the information they're getting on Jair Alexander, which was he was hampered early on with the Ravens, they feel good about the player that he has been and what he still could be. Maybe he could fill that spot. So I think it's going to be one of these situations where they're going to mix and match a little bit early and see which sticks. But the bottom line is we know that they've had issues filling that CB2 role. Safety number 2 has been okay with Makuba up and down. And so Fangio gets to have a few different looks over the second half of the season before settling on what he sees as sort of a final product in that defensive secondary.
Yeah, do you think Vic Fangio should be happy with the edge room now?
I think he should be a lot happier than he was, no question. It's not normal to look at the sacks across the NFL and see the Eagles tied for 25th. They have 16 of them coming in. We know that the edge position in particular, it's been tough going. Like Zadarius Smith is still their leading sack getter on the outside, and he played 5 games and has been retired for a couple weeks. And so you bring in somebody like Jalen Phillips, and you could hear it in Sirianni's voice today, where he's like, he plays the position exactly how we want someone to play the position. Like he talked about, the physicality that he brings, the way that he can set an edge. There's these qualities that they really feel, and he's somebody who can play inside and out too, by the way. Somebody that they feel can come in and give them production, I think, right away. And then when you're scanning the practice field today, you see Brandon Graham's out there. You see Nolan Smith is out there and has the potential to return from a triceps injury. And so all of a sudden they have some depth along that defensive line and at the edge in particular, and that's got to be a welcome sight for Vic Fangio.
We're talking to ESPN's Tim McManus on the Comcast Business Hotline. He's down at the Eagles NovaCare Complex right now. All right, so we just talked about the secondary, and we talked about the edge rusher room now being a lot better than what it was before the deadline. Now it gets interesting with linebacker, because what are you doing with Jahad Campbell, Nakobe Dean? I mean, we know Zach Baughn's a starter, but how are you going to manage Jahad Campbell and Nakobe Dean now?
So Nakobe Dean has come in, and it definitely feels like the run defense has improved since then. And we've seen him really show off what makes him so good. The instincts, getting downhill, diagnosing very quickly, and attacking. And that's been a benefit for this group. Jahad Campbell, I thought, acquitted himself well over the first half of the season overall. For a rookie to come in and start right away and make an impact, and you think about the interception near the goal line and some key plays that he's made. But if you're talking about, who's more steady right now? I think Nakobe Dean is probably the answer to that when healthy. And so for me, you find ways to mix Campbell in, and maybe he gets some snaps off the edge, which we saw when Dean came back. And maybe there's certain packages where you work him in, at the inside linebacker as well. But I think that if you're Fangio and you're looking at it realistically, Dean is just more seasoned. I think that he's been the better linebacker out of the two when he's played, and I think you have to lean more towards Dean right now.
All right, let's go over to the offensive side. I'll just say this. The offensive line was outstanding against the Giants. Best game we saw from them all year. Are they cured, and are we all set the rest of the year?
Maybe not ready to quite say it that way, but today we saw that Cam Jurgens wasn't out there. So that was really the one guy who was missing, and so I thought Brett Toth did great at center in that pass game against the Giants. That was a welcome surprise for the Eagles, no doubt. Maybe not a surprise for them, but for fans anyway, that he performed at that level. And I do feel like they have started to hit their stride some. They had to evaluate what was working, what was not. New offensive coordinator and Kevin Patullo, and he has started to lean more into under center, more play action off of that. I think that is more of the recipe of what's going to work well for this group that has really been trying to find ways to combat defenses that are not only stacking the box more, but also finding different ways to bring safeties downhill, eliminate space. It's been an uphill climb for them. But, now that they have a little bit of a new recipe on the offensive side of the ball, it seems to have taken hold. And you saw that Barkley was able to get some lanes and make the most of them against the Giants. So I think that it's going to be tough every week because of the heavy focus on the ground game. I don't expect it to be a 2024 redux where they're just going off and explosive plays out of the ground game constantly, but I do feel like the offensive line has hit its stride, and just as importantly, I feel like the offensive coordinator is starting to hit his stride a little bit more, where they're figuring out different ways to combat what defenses are doing to them.
Tim, you mentioned AJ and Saquon were at warm-ups, but Cam Jurgens wasn't. Have we gotten any updates about Cam Jurgens' injury at all?
It's been quiet on that front. The Eagles haven't put him on IR, and so we can just kind of deduce that they feel like it's not a 4+ week injury, right? And so we should be coming close to a point where we see him back on the practice field, but we haven't as of yet. A.J. Brown was back out there. He had the hamstring injury, of course, that kept him out of the Giants game. Saquon Barkley with the groin injury that kept him out of the fourth quarter against the Giants. But he told us in the locker room that if it was a closer game, he'd probably be out there, right? So there wasn't a huge concern coming into today. But, yeah, Jurgens kind of the lone guy missing. We'll continue to keep an eye on it. But the fact that he wasn't on IR, I think, tells you that they view that his return not far off.
All right, last one for you, Tim. Packers lose to the Panthers last week. Probably going to be a hungry team. Are you surprised at all that the Eagles are 2.5-point dogs on Monday night?
I mean, the NFC is so close. I'm not terribly surprised, given that it is in Lambeau. And to your point, Bill, that they are coming off of a bad loss. And I'm sure, just like everybody else in the league, kind of wants to take down the defending champs, right? It's crazy when you look at the standings right now. So the Eagles have the number 1 seed. But the top 8 teams in the conference are all separated by a game or less. That's crazy. So there's a ton of parity up top. Just a handful of 8 teams that are all vying for these top positions, and it just really makes you understand how important the next 2 weeks are for the Eagles. They go into Lambeau Monday night against the Packers, one of the top contenders in the conference, and then they turn around and they host the Lions. I mean, those are really two of the ones that you're jockeying for positions. You want to get that bye week. You want to be at home. You don't want to be taking trips to Lambeau Field, or you don't want to go to Detroit. You don't want to get into any of those situations. So I guess I can see it. If it was 2.5 points the Eagles' favor, I wouldn't blink either. But I think it's one of those where you have 2 pretty evenly matched teams in a hostile environment from Philly's perspective. Should make for great theater on Monday Night Football.
All right, Timmy, we appreciate it as always, my friend. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, boys. Take care.
All right, there he is, Tim McManus from ESPN. Does an awesome job, man.
What's up, everybody? It's Bill Colarulo from Unfiltered with Ricky Bo and Bill Colarulo. Thanks for watching. Make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel because we post a ton of content. It's not just what you hear on air. We're posting content all day long. We do some things before the show, after the show, even stuff during the show. So subscribe, like, do whatever you got to do. We got all this content coming to you every single day.